We're back for another advanced human civilization with such a pervasive strain of stupidity I found myself rooting for the ruthless alien creatures. Is that bad? Today we're declaring war on the future soldiers from the Tomorrow War. As usual, our alien invasion flick starts the horror early by throwing us into the hellscape that is American suburbia. We follow Dan, the soldier scientist family man, a down and out former Green Beret turned biology teacher who is a bit miffed that he can't land his dream job at a prestigious lab. Yet even his meager means has afforded him a cushy life in a McMansion with a loving family and a large circle of friends, who inexplicably tolerate him despite the fact he's about the worst party host imaginable. What a nightmare this must be for this man. Not that his daughter and wife are exactly present either, they're also ignoring their guests. This film's noticeable lack of realism hitting us early. These weird ass Americans sitting down to enjoy a game of Euroball in the middle of their shindig, in between a bit of sulking. Shall we just leave, guys? But don't despair too much, Dan, help is on the way. Unbeknownst to him, he's about to have the most desirable amalgam of skills going forward, as long as you're happy to be sent to your almost certain death in the future. Here come the future soldiers, gate crashing the Football World Cup final via time wormhole to make an announcement that will change their world forever. The NFL's got some work to do if they want to top that halftime show, that's for sure. The future soldiers requesting assistance from the past to fight their war against an overwhelming alien threat 30 years in the future.
Wow, you know, they say kids never come by unless they need something.
Their enemy, the White Spikes, appearing in Russia in the year 2048 and almost wiping out the entire human race after only 3 short years. In a desperate act, they somehow had enough brilliant scientists left to mock up a rudimentary time machine, opening a time tunnel that functions in lockstep with Dan's time, allowing limited travel to the past. And their only qualifying factor for their inclusion as an advanced civilization, even then only achieving the status of civilization due to them technically leading the last of future humanity. But they do bring with them a bottomless wormhole of stupidity, a disastrous characteristic to possess considering the sheer lethality of their enemies. The White Spikes, like their spiritual inspiration the Xenomorphs, appear to have been genetically engineered by a sapient alien race as a planet-clearing mechanism, though in many ways they greatly surpass the supposed perfect organism.
What did you just say to me?
Seemingly sharing some genetic similarities with their creators, the White Spikes represent a terrifying fusion of higher reasoning capabilities and brutal physicality. Not only clad in a skeletal frame of heavily armoured plating equipped with maneuverable projectile cannons and showing astonishing strength for their size, but also capable of elaborate social cooperation. And perhaps most concerningly, they also share a raft of behavioural and physical characteristics with our cuddly frenemies, those indomitable felines, which you just know can be nothing but bad news. Look no further than their supreme predatory abilities, razor-sharp teeth and claws, olfactory superiority, explosive speed, physics-defying agility, not to mention their high reproduction rate. Even their staggered gait and stalking postures are giving me flashbacks to when I made the grievous error of getting too close to Midden's kibble. They also sleep at least 1 full day a week. It wouldn't be an insult to say the White Spikes are at least as dangerous as an organised force of pampered house cats gone full feral mode ballistic. So in other words, every single one of you is doomed. Especially since the future soldiers seem to think that this guy will be able to contend with them. Point 1. Their recruitment policies are terrible, their basic training even worse. The future soldiers squander any opportunity to utilise the past Earth effectively. After the future soldiers ruined the Football World Cup for billions of people, the authorities of the past Earth bizarrely capitulate to their requests, seemingly accepting their story at face value and showing an uncanny example of global unity. They mobilize the Earth's militaries and put them at the disposal of the future soldiers. Disposal being the operative word here. Though with a time paradox to be concerned with, apparently no one who is alive in 30 years can be sent into the future, should they encounter themselves and trigger some sort of unspecified calamity.
To avoid some sort of paradox. That's why the people training us are so young.
Only 50% of people in the past are eligible to be slaughtered by the White Spikes, when in reality almost everyone should fit the bill, since, you know, almost everyone in the future is already dead. Not long after they arrive, it's said that only 500,000 people remain.
The future global population is currently estimated to be less than 500,000.
Which means that 99.994% of everyone on past Earth should be eligible for service. So they've weirdly hindered their operation based on faulty logic that makes absolutely no sense.
What?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Don't worry, you'll get used to that. It goes without saying that this is definitely one of those movies where switching the brain off is required.
We don't do that here.
Also worth noting, the future soldiers don't seem concerned at all with whether the people they're sending are due to have children before they were destined to die. They could find some of their younger future soldiers blinking out of existence when their ancestors are killed.
A few well-chosen commands to the computer, and you will cease to exist.
Not to mention, the mere act of taking anyone out of the timeline could have drastic, unforeseen consequences for the future.
I wish Stevie Nicks would show up in her birthday suit with a jar of pickles and a bottle of baby oil.
But still, the future soldiers persevere with it. But even with only 50% eligibility among the population, that should mean a pool of active duty soldiers numbering over 13 million, half of the available global forces. Yet after just 1 year of sending troops through the jump link, they're acting like they're all out of bodies. I mean, the survival rate is very low, but surely they can't have expended 13 million people already. Oddly, everyone is not just okay with how everything is playing out, but so unreasonably committed to a war that seems all but lost, they just go right along with the future soldiers' next ludicrous demand, agreeing to allow them to draft civilians. I get that they're desperate, but let's not pretend that this will help with anything.
Send in Stevie Nicks.
But hey, at least your family will get a payment of $1 million if you die. Well, that's okay then.
If you were to die in action,
I'm straight.
your dependents will receive a pre-tax payment of $1 million.
Can't we use that $1 million to buy a drone or something? Of course, it ain't the young'uns they're sending either. It's primarily older people being put on the chopping block, because they're still adhering to this nonsensical can't encounter your future self in a future where almost everyone is already wiped out thing.
I submit that is a faulty premise.
These white spike creatures have defeated the collective militaries of 2 different Earths, and for some baffling reason they think that unfit, bewildered office schlubs are going to turn the tide.
What are the requirements for conscription? A pulse?
Half of these people are going to be a liability on the battlefield more than anything. The only thing this guy is going to murder is a family feast at KFC. But that's not a concern for our boy Dan Forrester, who finds himself drafted not long after this policy comes in. Luckily for him, he already has military experience because the Future Soldiers Boot Camp is a laughably bad state of affairs. First, the good news, you're only going to be deployed for 7 days. Not sure what they hope to accomplish with a tour that short, but then again, up to 80% of them will be dead by then anyway.
I mean, I can see why you don't work in the recruiting department.
But the bad news, your military training will also be a woefully inadequate 7 days. Apparently some brainiacs think that's sufficient time for unprepared civilians to defeat a scarily dangerous race of alien monsters who have already bested far superior human foes by the millions.
Have any of you ever seen this creature?
I mean, they're putting the basic in basic training here. You'd have a more strenuous training regime signing up to be an Uber Eats delivery driver. After a pretty impersonal induction, which doesn't exactly dispel any thoughts about these guys having a notably authoritarian streak. You'll get to watch someone else shooting a gun for 5 minutes, and then a whole bunch of meaningless waffle.
I talk and I'm
Aside from highlighting the White Spike's weak points, don't expect any education on them beyond that.
Throats and abdomens. That's what you aim for.
They'll pummel you with a whole bunch of stuff that is almost completely irrelevant.
Time only flows in one direction. It's like a river.
CPR that they won't have time to use on anyone before being slaughtered themselves. But the bulk of the vital need-to-know info is being intentionally withheld. Because reasons. Very, very stupid reasons.
If the public saw what they'd face, it would become virtually impossible to fill that hunger.
The future soldiers choosing to keep their trainees mostly ignorant of the White Spikes, fearing it could impact their ability to recruit.
I do not accept that explanation.
Did they forget that all of these people have been legally compelled to be here under threat of severe punishment should they fail to show?
Or imprisonment, or your spouse or dependent of legal age taking your place.
Sure, some might choose to go on the run rather than turn up, but once they're here, they're basically prisoners, and obviously knowledge of the White Spikes can be confined to training.
We simply wish to examine the creature.
And any effort on the information control front is all moot anyway, because there is a constant stream of traumatized survivors coming back through the jump link, and they're already talking openly.
They're never gonna stop. Not until we're all dead.
Whether they took a Polaroid of a White Spike to flap around in people's faces is neither here nor there. The alien cats are well and truly out of the space bag.
Nevertheless, I will want to examine it in detail.
There's no good reason why recruits shouldn't be getting the full brief. To do otherwise would be to set them up to fail.
That's all we wanted from you was a little bit of help.
It's not like it will only be a lack of knowledge that could be disastrous to their performance. These creatures are not only cunning, but terrifying. Anyone facing the White Spikes needs to be desensitized to them as much as possible and well aware of their capabilities. Knowledge the future soldiers would surely possess. But no, thanks to their sheer idiocy, you won't be learning about the White Spike's suite of tactical maneuvers that can easily match or defeat their armed human counterparts, including but not limited to projecting their heavily armored backs to absorb incoming fire, cycling undamaged White Spikes onto the front line, allowing their injured brothers to retreat and recover, taking cover when under fire and responding with fire, evasive maneuvers, flanking maneuvers, calling for reinforcements. You'll have no idea there are White Spike officers who appear to be barking orders to other White Spikes.
He is a formidable military strategist, notorious for his cruelty.
You should probably kill them ASAP, but you won't know that. So naturally, you won't be learning any tactics of your own to counter the aforementioned.
Our best defense is knowledge.
Sorry, it's all need to know. What do you think this is meant to be? Military training?
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Prepare to be woefully unprepared to face the astonishing threat posed by these creatures, not to mention just the initial fear and shock of encountering them.
It is so much more overwhelming than one expects.
You'll be lucky if your operational ability doesn't go completely down the shitter. Even a hardened space marine might falter when encountering these things.
This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Considering the White Spikes eat humans to survive, at this point the future soldiers are just helping them thrive by supplying a constant stream of fresh meat just as their food sources were dwindling. Like some kind of hellish human sushi train. This insane series of policies sure makes it seem like the future soldiers actually want their recruits to lose, which according to some sources might actually have some truth to it. Supposedly an earlier draft of the script saw them using these civilian recruits as White Spike biotoxin delivery mechanisms. They were meant to be sent into the future and eaten, but ultimately they chose to make the future soldiers more sympathetic at the cost of portraying them as profoundly more stupid. The current in-movie excuse for all this is they're throwing people at the White Spike meat grinder in a desperate attempt to buy time while they brew up this biotoxin, which could potentially take the pain to the enemy on a massive scale.
And I have the higher obligation to keep you from putting yourself and others at risk.
But there are surely far better ways to utilize the past Earth in service of this or in actually winning the war. Attempting to wipe these guys out with conventional warfare and strategies seems counterproductive to say the least.
It would be tactically unwise to engage them.
The best antidote for the White Spikes isn't people, in other words more food, but technology. Surely the most logical way to utilize the past is through its gargantuan production capacity, pumping out a near limitless supply of lethal military hardware to turn the war in our favor. If you still insist on having people in the fight, that could be as simple as armored vehicles and tanks.
The big boy version of that wind-up toy you drove in.
But preferably an army of killer autonomous drones would be just what the doctor ordered.
We cannot stop innovating. That's how you solve a problem.
Especially since the White Spikes are probably weakest against air power. Their limited gliding ability and comparatively slow, weak projectiles shouldn't be a problem for highly maneuverable drones and the like. Equip them with smart missiles and they shouldn't even need to be close enough to be under threat. And even if you lose a few, at least the White Spikes will be denied a meal with their victory.
The success rate of your culinary experiments has not been high.
The future soldiers already have some fairly effective drones. It would just be a matter of supplying past Earth with the schematics. Let them blot out the skies of future Earth and destroy any sign of White Spike activity. People should only be needed for mopping up. Combine this with targeted nuking of White Spike population centers and I'd say you might just have a winning strategy.
Fucking A.
Still, that sounds like a lot of work. There's an even simpler solution to the white spike problem that requires far less effort and loss of life. Assuming stupid time paradox thing is still in effect, at least 50% of the future population should be eligible to be sent back in time. So that's 250,000 young people who could be evacuated to past Earth. Maybe more, considering the young are probably more likely to have so far survived the white spike onslaught. No need to abandon those left behind either, keep smashing the white spikes with whatever you can muster. But if the war is lost, you need only to starve out the white spikes, build another time machine if necessary, and then send the evacuees back to repopulate the Earth when the time is right.
I would have killed for a moment like this in high school.
At least then they could be assured that humanity would endure in some form, though I admit it probably won't do too much for past Earth morale. And you've already irrevocably changed the timeline, so who knows what would ultimately happen to these people. But that's true of any strategy you try to employ that involves interacting with the past. So considering they've utterly failed to take advantage of past Earth in ways that would actually be beneficial, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that their tactics and operational procedures on the battlefield are severely lacking as well. Point 2. Seeing how the future soldiers conduct their war, it's understandable how the white spikes dominated them so completely. The disastrous recruitment policies of the future soldiers are hard to beat in terms of sheer stupidity, but their actual war operations will give it a good run for its money, and that includes the time period before the past even got involved. Although the white spikes are indeed an impressive predator, perhaps the most impressive that has ever walked the earth, they still shouldn't be a match for a technological, militarized civilization. It shouldn't even really be close.
Just glad Will Smith isn't alive to see this.
Okay, so benefit of the doubt, the world got caught completely off guard. They couldn't scale military production quickly enough to flood the skies with drones or whatever, but that shouldn't even be essential to getting the win. Did the military-industrial complex just lose their S-tier bunkers all of a sudden? Even if we assume the majority of civilians couldn't be saved. I find it hard to believe that a portion of humanity sequestered away in the world's most fortified facilities couldn't have endured. Sure, the white spikes are formidable, but I wouldn't think them strong enough to contend with bunkers of this caliber. They could have beaten the white spikes in a war of attrition, starving them out 6 days a week and then taking the pain to them and gathering supplies on the white spikes' day of rest.
With those things running around, you can count me out.
And while you're out there, please will you find yourself some better firearms? Why aren't all these soldiers equipped with high caliber weapons and rocket launchers, etc.?
From a tactical point of view, the options are not encouraging.
There's zero excuse for why the civilian recruits have such underpowered weapons. But even in the future, with most of the population dead, there are surely copious amounts of powerful guns and ammunition just lying around waiting to be taken up. And so, with a starting point this bad, we know it's not going to be any better as we follow our poorly trained batch of recruits, who become a lens through which we witness the ongoing future soldier operational stupidity. It's off to a typically bad start, with the hapless cannon fodder being sent to the future after only a meager few days worth of training. Surely the future soldiers were planning on teaching them everything worthwhile on those 4 days they missed out on, right guys?
Oh yeah, sure.
This premature deployment, yet another desperately stupid move, the mission being vital and the war on the verge of being lost.
It's the last lab left studying the white spikes. If it's lost, the war is lost.
Which is through no fault of the future soldiers, I'm sure. I mean, this guy doesn't even know how to use his gun properly. What help do you think he's gonna be? But can someone tell me why there aren't numerous troop intakes at varying stages of training, some on standby ready to be sent at their order? Don't they have 50% of the entire world in their drafting pool? These jump facilities are located all around the world. Nope, okay, let's send the office schlubs and the anxious tech guy after only 3 days. Apparently this is currently their most elite fighting force.
Well, if you think this is bad, you don't want to see what happens next.
Booting up the time machine for an unscheduled mission, which I would hazard a guess has something to do with the next disaster. The jump link dumping its human data into cloud storage, and by that I mean it rematerializes our poor squad high above the city. Talk about hitting the battlefield. It's only through sheer dumb luck and a hefty dose of plot armor that our protag and a few others managed to survive, and mostly uninjured no less. A miracle considering the height they just fell from.
That is an entirely implausible plot development.
with only a fraction of their team surviving. Luckily, there's a leader among them. But surprise, surprise, the future soldiers didn't have the command structure sorted before dropping them in it. Dan getting himself a field promotion by way of being one of the only people who doesn't suck. The most experienced White Spike veteran isn't interested in command, not that he'd make a good leader anyway. After Dorian here found out he's due to die of cancer in a few years, he's trying to commit suicide by combat. Nobody tell him he could probably beat his cancer now that early detection is possible, because we're definitely gonna need this guy to die for the cause. So they're off for a stupid mission that should never have been necessary in the first place. For some inexplicable reason, the future soldiers decided to house their most crucial biotoxin research lab in the middle of Miami. Considering the threat, a city has got to be one of the shittiest location choices imaginable for this facility, even if we give them the benefit of the doubt that Miami was only recently overrun. Cities in general are the exact places you want to stay away from, and that's mostly true irrespective of disaster. But in this case, they've put their lab in the middle of a White Spike smorgasbord.
The Mediterranean Rapids, people!
Even dopey pigeons can figure out where their primary food sources are concentrated. This isn't going to be hard for the far more intelligent alien felines. And of course, they've put it in a high-rise building, like that isn't a great way to get surrounded and trapped. What, was there no more room at their epic offshore repurposed oil platform? This lab too good for your time machine HQ? If you want to spread the risk, at the very least put it on an offshore island somewhere, anywhere but here. Okay, so it's too late. The stupid lab is already here. But why are you sending these people on one of the most important missions in human history? Especially since you've already got some future soldier veterans on their way in Humvees to pick them up. Why couldn't they have just gotten the research to begin with? If everything depends on this, then obviously they should be sending the best they have. And now, with their amateur force well and truly in the deep end, they're continuing to sabotage them by offering poor battlefield support, only now informing them of the White Spike's epic sense of smell, after they've already been wandering through a ruined cityscape.
Dan, you should know the White Spikes can smell blood from a mile away.
That would have been good to know beforehand, so they can respond if anyone has a boo-boo.
You never know what conditions you might encounter. You must be prepared for anything.
To be honest, they're actually just lucky the White Spikes weren't all over that pool. Unsurprisingly, everyone who was manning this lab has been slaughtered, but by another dose of plot armor delivered luck. Despite being in the middle of a war zone, these fragile vials that humanity's survival depends on have miraculously not been smashed to shit. So with the vials secured, it's about time for their first White Spike encounter. Good luck with that. Barely managing to escape the building thanks to Dan and the other vets, but still under heavy attack as they make their way to the evac point. And just to add to the terror and pressure, the moronic future soldiers are carpet bombing this whole area in a few minutes. Why? I couldn't tell you. Not sure what that's meant to accomplish other than to create a ticking clock for our pro tags.
Start running now.
Sure, there are tons of White Spikes here, but killing them is not a pressing matter, unless they can do it in a manner that actually helps their poor civilian squad, which apparently they can't.
Let me grow a beard or dog.
Instead, they seem intent on destroying everyone and their precious vials along with them. You do remember, everything is riding on this team, right? And now they don't even have armored vehicles to protect them. A premature escalation of force brought about by apparent systemic failures within their command structure. In Tomorrow Warland, Colonel Murray is in charge of these battlefield operations. She even ordered Major Greenwood here to send in the Hummers.
Get those Humvees on site now!
You heard the Colonel. We need transport now.
But then, for some reason, he appears to have final say on when the bombers get underway, a decision that seems completely arbitrary.
We're gonna start the bombing.
And Murray is powerless to recall them.
These bombs are gonna drop in 6 minutes and there's nothing I can do about it.
I'm not sure what exactly is going on with this chain of command. Perhaps they have some idiot Air Force superior who's calling the shots.
A blanket bombardment has been ordered. Get me an ETA on that right now.
But maybe just go with whatever doesn't result in your most important people getting bombs dropped on them. So our crew are left to leg it out of the city with this threat dangling above their heads as if the White Spikes weren't bad enough. The suspected dead weight of the group doing remarkably well considering their operational abilities were so badly sabotaged. Although Robert here did mess up a touch, it took courage for these two to sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the group. Considering the circumstances, it's probably the only meaningful path they ever had. This guy not realizing he was actually auditioning for a greater role in Twisted Metal. I'm glad at least someone around here is onto bigger and better things. And thus concludes a supremely shitty mission that was a success through no doing of the future soldiers, them being guilty of killing more of their own squad than the White Spikes did. So let's meet these morons. It's Colonel Forrester, or as Dan soon finds out, his grown-up daughter, who has one-upped and outshone her underachieving father to a devastating degree, taking the sciencey soldiering to an unprecedented level of success, basically functioning as a prominent leader of the ruined Earth and spearheading the biotoxin research. But don't give her too much credit, after all, her prominent position also technically means she is primarily responsible for a lot of this reckless decision making, and she's far from done in that regard.
So the female survived the toxin. And now you want to find out why I didn't kill her?
Okay, benefit of the doubt, they only just managed to brew up this biotoxin thanks to the ampules Dan delivered. Yet they have it ready so quickly, they're deploying it on the very next mission. So it's imperfect, it only works on males. They should still be mass producing it and spraying it all over the place. And if you don't have the capacity to do that, then send it through the jump link and get past Earth to do it. Killing all the White Spike warriors is going to have a massive war-changing effect, even if you still have to kill the females conventionally. Instead, Muri fixates on speeding ahead to develop a biotoxin capable of killing male and female White Spikes, and in doing so wastes crucial time that could have been used winning the war. So they're off to nab a queen, losing a whole bunch of soldiers in the process and escaping by the skin of their teeth. Yeah, sure guys, have a moment together on the beach. Muri venting about things Dan hasn't even done yet.
You left us, and then you were gone.
Apparently this all being far more important than the war. Well, at least he died in a car crash not long after abandoning you. It's not like he got away scot-free.
Your interpersonal activities are delaying our progress.
Now they're off to their offshore base to do a bit of sciencing. Weird that a colonel has to do this personally, but whatever. At this point, it's worth pointing out that even if Muri's plan from the start was to develop a complete biotoxin not to help them in their time, but to prepare the past for their future war, now would be the best time to send the biotoxin and female tissue samples to the past, where the research can be completed safe and secure. Instead, she seems to do everything in her power to make sure their last remaining stronghold will soon be overrun by angry male White Spikes, failing to properly isolate the female even though Muri is aware she is secreting something.
She stinks.
Yeah, she's secreting something like sweat.
What's the bet the males can smell this musk from even further away than human blood? Keep in mind they haven't studied an alien female before, for all they know she could have some kind of psychic link to the males. Then, once Muri finally stumbles upon the ultimate biotoxin, she fails to kill the female immediately, not even doing so once it starts screeching for help.
This is all the toxin we have. We cannot waste it. Come on.
Is that the only way to kill a restrained White Spike now?
Throats and abdomens.
And so unsurprisingly the males start swarming the base hard.
It's reading right, man, look.
And for some reason their soldiers and defense drones aren't loaded up with male effective biotoxin. So now under immense pressure, Muri entrusting the singular vial of effective biotoxin to her father to take back to the past and change the future.
You can stop this war from ever happening.
But they're waiting around for the clock on Dan's jump link to count down when it probably would have been a better idea to send him through the portal immediately. Surely they have the capacity to send someone back whenever they want. That's how they originally sent people to the past, and they booted up the time machine in the past on a whim. But nope, Dan and the vial have to endure this siege instead. To be honest, Dan probably wasn't a great pick for being the sole recipient of this sample because he's heavily emotionally invested in Muri. And as he proves, he's willing to doom our entire species just to save his adult daughter, even though she was already dying.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Thankfully, the jump link thwarts that stupidity just in time.
Surprise, dumbass.
Miraculously, the time machine hadn't been destroyed yet, even though the entire facility it was attached to just got blown up, leaving me wondering what on earth was powering this thing. Epic tidal generators? Pure White Spike aggression? Muri acknowledging through words and deeds she is a firm believer that the past can be altered to prevent the war from ever happening.
You need to make sure this never happens.
So why didn't she make that the priority from the start? It sure would have saved a whole lot of pointless bloodshed. Point 3. The future soldiers could have used their time machine to end the war before it began. So Dan gets dumped back into the past, and thankfully he didn't rematerialize in the stratosphere this time, though he's still lucky he didn't smash the vial on the way in. Could they not even manage a steel case for it? Come on guys, let's get the basics covered at least. With the time machine in the future finally destroyed, the jump link is now severed, and the past world descends into chaos as it's assumed the coming war will be inevitably lost, now on track to tear themselves apart long before the White Spikes even show up. But still, the future can be changed, at least according to the beliefs of the future soldiers. The time mechanics of the Tomorrow War apparently functioning on a single mutable timeline, where changes in the past can affect the future, unlike a multiverse where past changes merely create new timelines. Though Dan the wannabe scientist is bucking the trend, seeming to believe he can go back and save adult Muri from her fate.
I'm coming back for you. We're gonna save this world.
Why would you even bother with that if you could prevent her from ever enduring the White Spikes at all? Science, Dan, do you have it? Not that the future soldiers are doing much better. They were smart enough to come up with a groundbreaking, potentially war-changing piece of technology in the time machine, and then they use it in the most illogical way possible. The prospect of actually winning the future war was already bleak anyway, instead of hindering past Earth's ability to respond to the threat they'll eventually face. From the start, their entire operation should have been dedicated to preparing the past world for their coming war with the White Spikes.
The lives of every man, woman, and child on this planet could be saved.
A biotoxin is great, but simply empowering the Earth for the White Spike emergence in Russia would probably be enough to end them. They have an entire 30 years to get this sorted, with their biotoxin research, drone schematics, technical expertise, and all the White Spike intel. Yes, you may actually have to share knowledge of the enemy, shock horror. They could have turned that area of Russia into a fortress, isolated and surrounded, supported by global forces, ready to pounce on the White Spike threat the second it emerges, and before they can build up their numbers.
So what if there's a whole army waiting for them when they get off their ships?
But lo and behold, none of this is remotely necessary, if only they'd been paying attention. It turns out the White Spikes didn't actually land around the time of their emergence. They've already been here for quite some time, frozen in ice. An idea you could speculate on pretty readily, considering the future soldiers never detected an atmospheric entry of any kind when the invasion began, and the White Spikes first appeared near the Arctic Circle, which is obviously covered in ice.
Nothing, they searched everything.
Just because they attacked in 2048 doesn't mean that's when they got here.
Not to mention, there's actual evidence on the White Spikes themselves of where and when they landed.
It's volcanic ash. It would have to be from the Millennium eruption.
They've been here the whole time.
Haven't the future soldiers been studying these aliens for years?
People just hate spending money on research.
Why is it left to a random volcano nerd and Dan's therapist wife to figure all this out?
Why don't you put her in charge?
If they had, they'd have known from the start that a biotoxin isn't even necessary. You can kill them in their cradle with nothing more than good old-fashioned explosives. Congratulations, you killed untold numbers of people in pursuit of something that was totally pointless. And the past Earth draftees might be gone forever, even if you manage to change the future.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So now it's left to Dan to mop up after the future soldiers' profound errors in planning, setting out to end the White Spike threat for good. A task that is entirely on him and his social circle, because the future soldiers' influence over the Earth's authorities didn't extend to actually notifying them about the biotoxin or anything else to do with the White Spike's origins.
You're not going to Russia. They're rioting at the border.
This Secretary of Idiotic Defense acting like some rioting is more important than preventing the Tomorrow War from ever happening, which is obviously the ultimate solution to the very rioting he's dealing with.
Listen, if we can go there now, we prevent this from ever happening, you understand?
After sending millions of people to their deaths, he can't even devote a modicum of manpower to this effort. Dan even has the young future soldiers at his back, marooned after the jump link was severed. You'd think they could vouch for him at least. They've gone from bossing around world leaders to total obscurity. Dan forced to enlist his estranged father for a clandestine mission to find the White Spike ship and destroy it. So it's up to this ragtag group of misfits to save the world, when this obviously should have been undertaken by professionals. Unfortunately, at this point, Dan and co enter in the fray as honorary future soldiers by way of their stupid high-risk plan, which comes very close to kicking off the White Spike invasion 30 years prematurely and at a time of high vulnerability.
If I gotta save the world to save her, then I'm damn sure gonna do it.
A very bizarre way for Dan to try and save his daughter. He's risking getting her killed before she lived her life at all. Finding the ship easily, kind of weird that the future humans never found this thing in their future post-invasion, or, let me guess, they didn't even look.
Next time someone asks that, you should probably just lie.
Rather than managing their entry carefully, they blow up the surrounding ice and get this thing defrosting. Come on guys, you had 30 years to convince the authorities to act. You can't tell me this is the best way to do this.
They do not appear to be posing a threat to us at this time.
Dan's still pretending Colonel Murray's death and everyone else's actually meant something, insisting on using a biotoxin which is no longer relevant. Despite there being at least hundreds of white spike pods to deal with, he starts jabbing a few with the stuff, with no concern at all that this might rouse the others. Does he not understand how long this method would take to clear the entire ship?
There's a whole colony down here!
They could have at the very least tried to find the female and do her first. Thankfully, somewhere in Dan's subconscious, he knew the biotoxin was useless because he also brought along a load of C4. But of course, now a few have managed to escape, including a female. Only stopped thanks to a father and son's mutual love of killing. The biotoxin's greatest benefit appearing to be it makes white spikes prone to good old-fashioned fisticuffs.
This is
Russia. Yes, okay Dan, the biotoxin finally served a purpose, but you wouldn't need to have used it if you'd never used it to begin with. Feel better though? I guess all those people did have to die after all. Dorian going out on his own terms and taking the rest of the white spikes with him, and conveniently the marooned future soldiers also died. Because if they stuck around long enough for their baby selves to be born, they'd have created the same time paradox their people were ridiculously committed to avoiding. They would have had to off themselves by their date of birth anyway. Finally, a good frickin' call from them. Maybe they should have got themselves killed way earlier. But in saying that, if they'd waited a few more minutes, they may have vanished from this timeline when the white spikes got killed. A fiery death may not have been necessary after all. Though the white spike war is apparently prevented, the future soldiers barely deserve any credit for it. It was won in spite of them, not because of them. And the same goes for the morons of the past Earth.
And you know what? I'd do it again.
But here's hoping that victory remains secure, because there is always the grandfather paradox to consider, whereby the future that happened won't happen, so the future soldiers will never build a time machine and the whole chain of events will cease to exist. Who knows, after the credits roll, maybe the timeline reset and the white spike ship respawned.
The disaster may well be inevitable.
But miraculously, we do get a nice clean thematic resolution to the messy alien time travel war. Dan imbued with a new source of contentment after secretly saving the world, presumably learning to appreciate what he has and recommitting to his family. Hopefully he remembers to avoid car travel in 7 years. Oh, and everyone had their daddy issues wiped away along with the white spikes and the future soldiers. Though the apparent commentary on climate change didn't resolve very well.
Show everybody the world has a common enemy to fight.
They can talk about it till we're all dead.
The people did technically come together to fight a common threat, but they weren't cooperating in a way that achieved anything good. This also being the most realistic thing in the entire movie. Well played, I guess. But with a sequel to the Tomorrow War in the pipeline, said to be focusing on the White Spike's origins and presumably their alien masters, who we already know are guilty of at least one major cock-up after apparently crash landing on Earth.
Looks like we found our cockpit.
Whether it be them or more future soldier absurdity, we may not be done with this universe just yet.